A pencil with the eraser, there's one.
All right. So where are we going to start here?
I think we should start from the top.
Okay. Let me make sure that I can. Can you read all of that?
Yeah, I can read it.
Big enough that you can read it? Because I can
Yeah,
probably.
I also have the physical one in front of me too.
Okay, good. All right. Let me take a screenshot of it so I can write on here. That's going to be the easiest way. So what's A? First of all, what kind of a graph is that?
I think it's the parabola because we've been doing a lot of
Yeah,
those.
it's a quadratic. All linear functions are straight lines. All quadratics are parabolas.
Got it.
Okay, and this is quadratic. How would I start to, hold on a second. My pen isn't working. Just one second. Let me try this. And let me do this also. Try retaking a picture of it. Where's the vertex of that parabola?
Uh, I do not know the vertex. Wait, what's the vertex again?
The vertex is this part. Or if it's
The center.
parabola, it's that part. You can see that that is the most important part on a parabola, where the
Yeah.
vertex is. That tells you pretty much everything you need to know almost. Well, hmm.
I I don't know how to start this because there's not like any type of functions or anything. It's just like one number, a exponent,
Yeah,
and then
yeah. Well, let's give you a couple of ways to do it.
all right.
First of all, it wants the x-intercepts, the y-intercepts, and the vertex. Okay. Now,
Yep.
the easiest way to get the vertex is, uh, let's start over here. The x coordinate of the vertex, remember the vertex is a point, so it has an x and a y coordinate.
Yes.
It's equal to minus b over 2a. Okay.
Okay.
Now, do you know what a is and do you know what b is?
Uh, I assume B would be the
Let's start with a. What's a?
A is X, no, 3? I don't know.
Yes. These a, b, and c are always the coefficients. They do not include the variables. So that coefficient, a is the coefficient of the x squared term.
Yes.
What's b?
B is the exponent, I believe.
No.
Or it's
B
the
is the coefficient of the x term.
oh,
So what is the coefficient of the x term?
the coefficient of the X term is I don't know. Like, are you talking about like where it says X in the
Here's the
problem?
standard. Here, let's talk about the standard format for a quadratic.
Okay.
There's your a, coefficient of the x squared term. B is the coefficient of the x term. C is the constant.
Yes.
Well, we don't have an x term, so B has to be 0. And
Okay.
we don't have a constant. C has to be 0. But in this particular problem, we don't really care about C, at least not yet. But we do care about the vertex. So what is minus B over 2A?
So it'd be 0
Correct. Doesn't matter
for
what the denominator is. If 0 is your numerator, it's 0. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the x-coordinate of our vertex is 0. What's
Yes.
the y-coordinate?
The y-coordinate is 0. It's just 0, 0.
You take the x-coordinate and you plug it in and figure out what y equals. Well, the y-coordinate is also 0. That tells us our vertex is at 0, 0. Okay? And this thing is going to look basically like that. I know it opens up because it's a positive 3. If there's a negative a, then it opens down.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, so we have the vertex. The vertex is 0, 0. And it says, what are the x and y intercepts? Now, what's the x-intercept?
0,
And what's the y-intercept?
0.
Okay, so we're pretty much done with that problem. Now, what I didn't really answer is whether it should look like that, or perhaps skinnier. In other words, I haven't really taken much effort to make sure I'm graphing it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is all I have to do if I want to figure out exactly how to graph it is to pick a point. What is y when x is 1?
Where is y when x is 1?
Huh?
0?
Plug x equal 1 into that function.
Oh, so if y is, so
No,
it'd be 1. No, no, what?
plug in 1
I'm
for
confused.
x, and in fact figure out what y is.
Oh, so I'm sorry, I'm super confused. So you're saying in the equation we put a 1 in front of the x?
This is the function. Okay, this is the function we are talking about right there. Now,
Yes.
if I want to graph that, well, I knew where the vertex was. I knew it was a parabola that opened up. I just didn't know whether it was a skinny parabola or a fat parabola. So let's pick a point for x. I'm going to pick the number 1, and you tell me what y is when x is 1.
Okay. So I
The way you do this is you just plug in 1 for x. So y equals 3 times 1 squared.
oh I I'm super lost. I would assume that y would be 1, but I'm
Well, do the math. Plug in
hmm.
1 is x is 1.
Oh, you mean can I use a graphing calculator or
Don't
no?
need to. Can you figure out what
No,
that number is?
it's no, I cannot figure out what y is.
What's 1 squared?
1 squared is 1 because it's
What's
1
3
times 1.
times 1?
3.
Then y.
Oh, so it's 3. So y equals 3. I'm
That means
sorry.
that point is on our graph. Now, I knew that the vertex was there, so just having one other point tells me whether this thing is skinny or fat. And I also know that it is symmetrical about the line of symmetry. So I know this point also has to be on that graph. And what I have now is a more accurate parabola that looks like that. That's not supposed to be a V, but it's kind of rounded. But now I know whether it's skinny or fat. In other words, it doesn't look like that, okay? And if
Yeah.
all I needed besides the vertex was 1 point for x, figure out what y is, and that tells you a point that's on that curve,
Okay.
okay? So that's what we're going to do for all of these. Now, the next one. Again, let's find, and this is B over here. So what is the vertex? The vertex, the x-coordinate of the vertex, let me write that like that, equals, what's the general formula again?
The general, like how to solve for vertex.
That's what I mean when I say the general formula. In other words,
So,
regardless of the function, this formula will always give you the vertex. Always. Okay?
yeah,
So start with the general formula. Okay? Now you just
the
got to plug in what is A, B, and C. First of all, let's ask what is A?
A is 1/2.
Now include the sign. A is actually minus 1/2
Oh,
because there's
yeah.
a minus sign in front of it.
Yep.
What is B again?
B is 0.
And C is 0. Now,
Yeah.
again, we don't need a C because it's not in there, and you don't need C to figure out the x-intercept, the y-intercept, and the vertex. Again, we know the vertex is right there. Now,
Yeah.
does this parabola open up or down?
It goes down.
Correct. Now, let's see if we can find one other point. In other words, I know the parabola goes like that. Well, here, let me point it out like this. The parabola goes down, but I still, just like the last problem, I don't know whether it's skinny or fat. So let's pick a number for x, a simple
Uh,
number for x.
1 or 2.
How about 2? 2 is
Yeah.
actually a little easier in this case because it gives us some distance between our points. It'll make it a little easier to draw the graph. Okay?
Yeah.
So when x is 2, what is y?
When X is 2, what's Y? So, so
Plug in
again,
2,
like the other one,
2
we
for x.
times,
No, here's what.
so we,
So y is going to be minus 1/2 times 2 squared. That's what I mean
so
when
we,
I say when x is some number, you're going to plug it in for x, and you're going to figure out what y is. And that allows us to put another point on this graph. So what does that equal
so
to right there?
1/2 times 2. I don't know how to times fractions. Oh, wait, yes, I do. Um, so so what I
Do
kind
the
of know
exponent.
is
Do the exponent first. What's 2 squared?
2 squares 4.
What's
So it'd
minus
be 4
1/2 times 4?
minus 1/2 times 4. Uh, 2
Minus 2. Use your calculator if
minus
you need to.
-2. Okay, yeah.
Okay? So what that tells me is when x is 2, y is minus 2. That means that point has to be on that graph. Notice what that point is. X is 2, y is minus 2.
Okay.
Okay? Again, I know
Yeah.
everything's symmetrical. So I know there has to be a point about the line of symmetry. And now I know exactly what the graph looks like. In other words, by plugging in a point for x, that tells me how skinny or wide that parabola is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? All right, let's do C. I gotta scroll down here a little bit. Now we're getting a little more complicated. Notice what we're looking at here is I do have a B and I do have a C. Okay? So,
Okay.
hmm, hold on.
Do we need a factor for these?
Not yet. Um, and not in this problem. You can't actually factor this one. There are no factors of 13 that add to the number 8. So let's go back and first of all, we'll answer their vertex. So the general formula for the x coordinate of the vertex is what again?
The general formula is -b over 2a.
Yeah, and then let's just answer what is A, what is B, and what is C for this function.
Could you please write down the lettering thing where it's y equals, I think, yeah, that.
Well, notice A is always the coefficient of your biggest variable. B is always the
Okay.
coefficient of the next biggest, whoops, didn't need that squared there, of the next biggest variable. And C is just the number without the variable. So if you think of lining up your function with x squared first, x second, and the constant last, then you're looking at A, B, and C. So what is A?
0.
Nope. What's the coefficient in front of that x squared?
Uh,
1.
1? All
If
right,
something
so
is
it's
not written, it's presumed to be 1 in cases
all right,
like this. In other words, you would not write a 1 there. You don't need to. When a coefficient is 1, you can leave it blank. Okay? What's B?
B is 8,
Nope. Got to include its sign.
8x. No,
No,
negative 8.
you don't include the x ever. A, B, and
So
C are
negative 8.
strictly numbers. They never include value. They never include a variable. So B is
So
minus 8. And
got
for the heck of it, what's C?
it. Positive 13.
Okay. I don't need the plus sign again there. So tell me what the vertex, the x coordinate is.
It would, do we have to use the equation for vertex?
Use that right there.
Okay, so do we divide B by, so do we divide
Well, first of
8
all, let's do it one step at a time. What's minus B?
minus B is negative 8?
No, that's B. That's that's plus B. What's minus B?
Oh, minus 8.
No. Minus a minus is a plus. So
Oh,
B minus B is 8. I mean, I can write it like this if you understand it a little better. Notice what I've done. I haven't dropped that negative sign, never dropped negative signs. And in place of B, I wrote negative 8. And now we have negative, negative 8, which is a positive 8. And what's 2A?
A is 1, and so, or, so it's A equals 1, correct?
Okay, what is 2A? That's what we need.
Oh, so do we times 2 by 1?
Uh-huh.
So it'd be 2.
Okay, now simplify that. What's,
Then it
what's
would
a negative negative 8 over 2 equal to?
2 equal to, um, negative 4?
Nope, these two negatives become a positive. So this is the
Okay.
same as 8 over 2, which is 4.
Oh,
Okay,
4 over.
so that tells me the x coordinate of the vertex, and it also tells me, let's talk about the line of symmetry. They don't ask for a line of symmetry, but a line of symmetry is the line that goes right through the x coordinate of the vertex. Okay? Now I got to figure out what the y coordinate of the vertex is. And there is all I do is I go up to my function and I plug in for x, the x coordinate of the vertex, which we just calculated is 4. So when x is 4, what is y?
So,
Here, I'm going to write it out over here. So y would be what? 4 squared. Finish it for me.
so y equal would be 8. No,
Let's
so,
do it. Don't give me a final answer. I want to know every step. So it's
so,
4 squared, and you got to plug in x, or you got to plug in 4 for the other x.
so it would be 4, 4 times 4 to the, what? I'm so lost now.
All right, here's what we're doing. here's our function that I've circled right there.
Yes.
We know where the x coordinate of the vertex is. It's at
Yeah.
x equal 4.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to know where the y coordinate is, I plug in the x coordinate into the function, which is 4 squared minus 8 times 4. I'm plugging in 4 wherever I see x plus 13. You with me?
That makes so much sense now.
Okay, good. And now what we've got is 16 minus 32 plus 13, and that gives us minus 3. So
Okay.
the y-coordinate for the vertex is minus 3. If I go up to my line of symmetry, minus 3 is right there. So that is 4 comma minus 3. I know, does this thing open up or down?
It opens down.
No, it's got A is plus. If A is positive, they always open up. If A is negative, they open down.
Yes.
Well, A is a positive 1, so it opens up. Okay? Now, what I still don't know, in other words, I know it looks something like this, but does it look like that, or might it look like this? In other words, the vertex isn't all I need. I start with the vertex, but what would be very helpful would be some x or y intercepts. Okay?
All right.
And those are a little harder to figure. The y-intercept is really easy to figure.
Got it.
The y-intercept is when x equals 0, always, no matter what the function. If you're talking y-intercept, you're talking about when x is equal to 0. And if I plug x equals 0 in here, it takes care of that term, and you're left with 13. Okay? So
Okay.
what that tells me, hold on, let me erase what I've drawn here, is now I have a point at least. In other words, when x is 0, y is 13. Well, this graph only goes up to 3, so we'll put it somewhere up here. Okay? And I also know that it's symmetrical, so I'll put the other half over there. And this graph's going to look something like that. Okay? In other words, I've got my y-intercept, I've got my vertex, but you notice the problem also said, tell me the x-intercepts. So I need those 2 points.
Oh,
Now, what x-intercept's harder? The y-intercept's always really easy. The y-intercept's always that constant. You don't even have to do any math to figure the y-intercept. It's whatever c is. Okay? The x-intercept is where y equals 0. So over here on the right, I'm going to write our function y equals x squared minus 8x plus 13. And I'm looking for where y is 0, because at these 2 points I've circled, y is 0 at both of them. So I'm going to solve this equation. Now, the problem is that's not easy to solve. You have to use the quadratic formula.
got it.
Okay? Now, the quadratic formula uses this a, b, and c, but you have to know what it is. In other words, you have to know the general quadratic formula. When you cannot factor a quadratic, here's what gives you its zeros, which means it's x-intercepts. Now, a lot of places they teach you a song to memorize this. I wish I knew the song. I don't. But you need to figure out how to memorize that. Okay? Now, the B, the A, and the C that you see in that formula are the same A, B, and C that are up there.
Okay.
Okay, in fact, I've already figured out what A, B, and C are right over here on the left.
Mm-hmm.
So let's plug it in. What is X going to be equal to here? And this will give me both my coordinates on the x-axis where it crosses the x-axis. So what is negative B?
Negative B is -8 in parentheses next to
Take
the
out the
negative.
negative signs. When you have two negative signs in a row, always immediately convert it to a plus sign. When I had this over here, that just becomes +8. You don't need to write it as negative negative. What's important
Okay.
is that you don't drop a negative sign. If you drop a negative sign, that's -8. Well, that's a completely different number. You're not going to get the right answer if you put -8 down there. But
Yeah.
minus B again is what?
Minus B is 8.
Okay.
-8.
No.
Yeah. Oh, 8. Just 8?
Well, what is B? Tell me what B is.
B would be 8.
What is B? We wrote it right over there.
Oh, B's -8.
Okay. So minus B has to be +8.
So it would,
In other words,
like,
you don't drop any negative signs. This is the way I'm going to write it. In place of B, I'm going to write -8. And now I got two negative signs together, turns into a positive. Okay? So instead of writing -8, I'm going to write just 8. That's what negative B is 8. Now let's do the rest of it. What's B
all right.
squared?
B squared is -8 squared.
Do that on your calculator.
So, yeah. Let me turn it on. Negative to the power of 2 equals -64.
Nope. You didn't put it all in parentheses. You're squaring -8. You're not doing negative and then squaring 8. You're squaring -8, which means I'm doing -8 times -8. What is -8 times -8?
-8 times -8.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. -8 times -8, right?
Mm-hmm. You have to use parentheses.
64 positive.
Okay, that's the difference. And that's all the difference in the world. Had you if I'd have written -64, I'm getting the wrong answer. You cannot make a single mistake here. Okay? Now, let's just fill in everything before we do any simplification. Tell me what A is.
A is 1.
Tell me what C is.
C is 13.
So that's my first step. And then 2 times 1 is 2. Okay? So this is going to be my answer, but that can be simplified. And let's do it because that completes the problem. Ooh, wow, what did I do there? How did I get a ruler on that thing? And
I
how,
was
oh,
so confused when it popped up.
I see. I accidentally hit that. Okay, what I need is my eraser so I can create some room over here. In other words, I've got to reduce this answer we got from the quadratic. Notice one thing about the quadratic formula. That first part right there, that's the same as the vertex for the x-coordinate.
Yes.
And that should help you memorize both. In other words, when you're trying to memorize the quadratic, that should help. Or if you've memorized the quadratic and you're trying to remember what the x-coordinate of the vertex is, it should help remembering minus b over 2a. Okay, here's how I do the math on this. I always do that part first without the negative sign.
So 4 times 1 times 13.
which is 52.
All
Now
right.
I subtract 52 from 64, and that leaves 12. So now this is what I got. I got 8 plus or minus the square root of 12 all over 2. Well, square root of 12 simplifies to what?
Square 6, I believe.
No, when you're simplifying radicals, you've got to find factors where one of them is a perfect square number. Well, 12 is 4 times 3. 4 is a perfect square number. So instead of writing this square root of 12, I could actually write it as square root of 4 times square root of 3. You can always do that. That's a rule of radical signs. Okay? What's the square root of 4?
2.
So I'm going to cross that out and replace it with the whole number 2. So my square root of 12 actually reduced to 2 root 3. And that's helpful because now I can divide top and bottom by 2. And it reduces it. 8 divided by 2 is 4, plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is 1, root 3. So those are my two x-intercepts.
So
this one right here is 4 plus root 3. This one over here is 4 minus root 3. That's what it means when you see plus or minus. It means there are two answers. One uses the plus sign, the other uses the minus sign. And I don't need to convert those to decimals. That is a perfectly legitimate answer, and in fact, those are the best answers. Much better than a decimal. A decimal is going to be an approximation. What we're looking at is exact. Okay? And remember what they wanted. They wanted the vertex, we got that. They wanted the x-intercepts, we got both of them. And they wanted the y-intercept. We got that. That y-intercept is at 0, 13. In other words, that is C. So we answered everything they're looking for. Now, there's a lot of math in this. A whole lot. Now, if I knew I was going to have to use the quadratic formula to begin with, then I wouldn't have done this step here. I would have used the quadratic formula. I would have taken these two numbers, and now I know my line of symmetry goes right halfway in between these two numbers, which is at 4, excuse me. Halfway in between these two numbers is 4. That is my x. Now I can figure out that. In other words, I can kind of save this step. I don't have to do that step if I know I'm going to have to use the quadratic formula. If I know I can factor that, I don't have to do this step. So it helps to look a little bit ahead here when you're looking at these problems and knowing everything you're going to have to figure out, because it can make the first parts easier. In other words, this step over here was definitely the correct first step for those first two problems because they were easier formulas. They weren't as hard as this one. This one doesn't factor. That automatically makes it hard. Okay, now I'm going to erase everything. Take a look at everything. You need to remember this. That's standard format. Most of the time they're going to give it to you like that. In other words, so far, every single problem they've given us is standard format.
got it.
Okay? So remember that. That'll tell you what A, B, and C are. Remember this. You can use it when it's the easiest thing to do. And remember the quadratic formula. You're not going to get anywhere if you can't remember that. That's a must.
Y equal, yeah. I'm just writing down the thing at the top with y equals ax2 thing.
That's called standard format. And
Yeah,
notice that formula they gave it to us was exactly standard format. Had the x squared, had the x, had the constant. Just got to figure out what A, B, and C are. Okay? All right. Can you have me erase everything?
yes.
Okay, let's look at D. D is the same thing. It's in standard format, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, question is, it's not easy for you to figure this out at the moment as to whether that's factorable or not.
Oh, we
Joshua,
did this.
I want to skip D because we're going to spend 20 minutes doing
Oh,
D, and I don't think that's the best place for us to spend our time.
we were doing this, and like this was like the teacher was like going to be like, yeah, we're doing this in class, so we are doing it during class, but it was like much more of like a game thing. But she
Let's
said the rest of it
back.
was homework.
This is
So, but
what
we,
they're going to test you on most is factoring. Both of these are going to require the quadratic formula. That's not in our best interest. You need to cover easier stuff than the quadratic formula. In other
yeah,
words, we need to back up a little bit. Okay?
yeah,
One thing you've got to be able to do is factor. And you got to be able to recognize when you cannot factor. I cannot factor that. I'm not going to be able to factor that. That makes a big difference. If I decide I can't factor it, I know I have to use the quadratic formula. And if I got to use the quadratic formula, I'm not going to bother to figure out what minus b over 2a is. So there's a lot of implications in that. But quite honestly, that's too advanced for you at the moment. We need to
yeah.
back up. We need to do some factoring. We got to get you so you know how to do factoring for sure. Far more
Yeah,
important than these more difficult problems that they are giving you.
yeah.
Nothing wrong
Well,
with problems,
we
but you got to go easy, medium, hard.
we did D in class, so I know the answer is 0, but like it wasn't like she didn't write out on the board what to do because it was like we're trying to get through that
Well,
activity
doing
fast.
B is exactly the same as we did C, and it took 15 minutes.
Yeah,
Okay? We're going to be far better off teaching you how to factor.
got it.
Let's do 2A. This one does factor. Now, when I say it factors into linear factors. Something like x minus 3 times x plus 4. Something looks something like that. Okay, that's what I mean by linear factors. There's no x squareds in there. There's an x that makes it linear. And this times that has to equal that. That's what factoring is it's the opposite of foiling.
Yeah. I
So,
remember us doing this
yeah,
first time we
no,
ever did this.
I did it because you really can't go far in algebra without knowing how to factor. You just can't. So let's go through the steps. What's the first step?
The first step is to split B between the two parentheses.
Okay, that's correct. A B goes there and a B goes here. It's the second step.
The second step, I believe we put in pause like
Figure out
additions.
both signs. That's what you need to remember, is you got to figure out both signs. What do both signs have to be? There's only one way you can produce that number, a plus, and also have a plus middle term.
Is they both have to be positive, so I assume just
Yeah.
addition.
The fact that it's plus 7 means they both have to be the same. And so that means they're either negative, negative, or positive, positive. You look to the middle term, that's a plus, therefore it's plus, plus. What's the third step? The third and final step.
Is to figure out what the numbers are that go
You know
into it.
what? I'd like you to express it verbally to me because if you can do that, you'll memorize it better. And the verbal answer is factors of 7
Factors of 7
that add because of that
that add because of that
to the number 8.
to the number 8.
Yeah, not the plus 8, not the minus 8, but just to that number.
Oh, 2 times 4.
Nope, those don't
Oh,
add
wait.
8. And first of all, 2 times 4 are not factors of 7. Remember, we're looking for factors of the constant. That's the constant. We're looking for factors of C. Well, let's list all factors of 7. Always start when you're trying to figure out factors, start that way. Now, can you find any other factors of 7? Remember what we're looking for. Factors of 7 that
Factors
add
of
to the
7.
number 8.
I believe it's just 7, 1, but I don't know any other
Yeah,
factors for
you're
7.
right. There aren't any other factors. So it's either 7 and 1 or we're down to using the quadratic. But 7 and 1 work. Now, how can I prove that they work? Do I have to
By
multiply that by that, or is there an easier way to prove they work?
by doing the box.
By doing not the
Method.
box, but the inside two terms multiply together and the outside two terms. It's what I call my double smiley face.
All
Notice
right.
with the two inside terms. That is the I of FOIL. And the two outside terms are the O of FOIL. So it's B times 1, which is B. Add them together, bingo. Since that is our middle term, we did it right. And that's the only term I really need to check, is that middle term. I don't need to FOIL this whole thing. And the reason I don't is because I know the b squared is correct. It's not hard to split b squared up into b times b. And I know the numbers are correct. I know that 7 times 1 is 7. So I'm not worried about the end terms. What I'm worried about is that middle term. I got to be able to produce that plus 8b, that term right there. And I do. So I factored it properly. Okay, let's do another one.
Oh, I think I can do. I probably can do. Actually, no, I can't do. I was like,
Let's just have you do it. Rather than thinking you can do it, or probably, let's just do it. Do B.
all right. So first, step 1 is we split the two ends between the two
Okay.
parentheses.
Mhm.
1 second, I just have to erase something. So n and n
Okay. Second step.
is to figure out the sign, and knowing that the middle sign's negative, I would
The first sign
assume.
you want to look at is that sign right there.
All right.
Because that tells you both signs have to be what?
Positive.
No, that tells you they have
Negative.
to be the same. Because you can have a negative times a negative and it'll produce that plus 10. But you can also have a positive times a positive. The only thing we know is that they have to be the same. They're not different. One isn't positive, one isn't negative. They are
So
both
they both
the same. Now the question is, are they negative or are they both positive? Look to the middle term. What are they?
negative.
Okay, so that's step 2. What is step 3?
Step 3 is to find what factors of 10 that equal 11.
Not equal, add to. Because of the
Add to
plus sign that's in front of the 10, they got to add to 11. Okay, so here, I'm going to list the factors of 10. There's one set. I can divide 10 in half, which means I got to double that one. So those are the only two sets of factors that I know of for 10. Which set of factors add to the number 11?
Uh, it would be 10 times 10 1.
10
because
and 1, yes.
yeah.
That, I don't even have to decide which one goes which. Since it's negative, negative, I can put the 1 on the left and the 10 on the right. Okay? Now, tell me how to check and see if I've done it right. And you won't have
Uh,
to always do this, but until you really get good at it, you should do it.
you do the n times, so
The inside
you
and
do
the
the
outside.
double,
That's
so
what you
you
want
do
to
the
remember.
double smile.
Yeah, the double smiley face. What's the inside?
Inside is 10n,
Oh, no, it's minus.
negative 10n,
Okay, that
negative,
minus sign. What's the outside?
uh, negative 1n,
Add them
or
together.
negative n. And then add them together will equal negative 11n.
I'm done. In other words, that is my middle term. That means I did it correctly. Okay, not a bad drawing of a person. With, I guess these are the ears.
Yeah.
I'm not an artist, but okay, let's try one more. You just cannot get enough practice with factoring, and I want to keep doing it until I feel comfortable you know how to do it. Now this is going to have, nope, this is still going to have exactly 3 steps.
Yes.
Sometimes if that constant has a negative sign instead of a positive, then it's going to have a 4th step, because then you're going to have to decide which factor to go with which sign. Okay? But that's
Okay.
relatively easy. But this is easy problem here. Let's do this quick. Tell me how to do it.
Okay. First you split the two b's between the two parentheses.
Second step.
Second step is second step is to find the sign, and I figured out that the sign would be negative due to the middle term being negative
Okay.
6b.
But the second step is to determine both signs. It's not one
Oh,
sign you're determining. We got to determine both signs. They're both negative.
yes.
Has to be. That will produce a +8, or it'll produce a plus sign on whatever number that is, and it will give you a negative in the middle term. Okay, what's the third step?
Is to find the factors. I know one factor is 6, 1.
Hold on,
The second,
hold on. You're not memorizing it quite right. You want to find factors of the constant. You
yes.
keep finding factors of the middle coefficient. This is the constant.
Oh, we have to find factors of the constant that equals 6.
Not equal, add to.
Add to 6.
Okay,
Okay.
so here I'm going to list factors for 8. We got 8 and 1, cut 8 in half, double that. Now I could cut 4 in half, but those are the same two factors. So I really only have 2 sets of factors, 8 and 1 and 4 and 2. Which one?
4,
4,
4 and 2.
because we're looking for factors that add to the number 6. Notice I'm not looking to add to negative 6. I'm looking to add to the number 6. That's it. Okay? Now, we got enough time that we can do some of these harder ones. They're not terrifically harder, but they're a little bit harder. And what makes them harder is this coefficient in front of the squared term. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay.
I have for D,
Okay.
I have like I haven't written out. I think my group got this one correct, but I'm not completely sure.
Well, if you
And it's
go ahead. Well, let's go through the process. I don't care about the answer. I want to make sure you understand the process. This is different. In other words, the moment you see a coefficient, that's going to make it a harder quadratic unless we can factor out that coefficient. Can we factor a greatest common factor? That's what you always want to look for in these quadratics as a first step, is can you factor out a greatest common factor?
No.
They're all even numbers. That means you got to be able to divide an even number by 2.
Oh. Yes, you
Okay,
can.
so if I factor out a 2, what do I have left?
You have 11,
No,
and then
dividing every term by 2, start from the left and go to the right.
so the first one. Are we starting with
Start from
the
the left
2k?
and go that direction. And
So
you
it'd be
are dividing
here.
every term by the greatest common factor, which is 2. So divide
So it'd
k
be
squared by 2, what do you get?
1.
No, this is what you're doing over here. You're taking 2k squared, you're dividing it by 2.
Oh,
You
so
get
would I first have to oh wait, do those cancel out? So it'd just be k2?
k squared,
K2, k squared.
k squared. It's not the same as k2. k2 is this. That means k times 2. K
Okay.
squared means k times k. Okay, now divide the middle term by 2. What do you get?
The middle term would be 11
Plus, and I do need
plus
the
11.
plus sign there. If I just write 11k, that whole expression, in other words, if I just write 11k, I got this, that doesn't even have any meaning because there's no sign in between the two terms. So the only time you can ignore a plus sign is when it's at the beginning. I did not need a plus sign in front of the k squared. Okay? But I do need a plus sign in front of the middle term. I got to know what to do with that middle term. Am I adding it? Am I subtracting it? What am I doing? Okay, now divide 60 by 2.
Is positive 30.
Okay, now notice what we're looking at. If I look at just that part of the quadratic, that's exactly the same as an elementary one, right? In other words,
Mm-hmm.
I can do this quadratic factoring exactly the way I did A, B, and C. So let's do it.
Okay. So
First step.
so first step is we split k between two parentheses.
Second step.
Second step is determine both signs,
What are they?
and it is going to be addition,
Plus plus.
plus plus, yes.
Okay.
And then we have to find factors of 30 that equal 11,
Not equal.
that add to 11.
Okay. There's a big difference. They have to add to 11. Okay. So I'm going to go over here on the left and I'm going to start looking at my factors of 30. Okay. Now, I always do these the same way, and I would recommend you do it a similar way. If you can cut the first one in half, do so, and then double the other number. So 15 times 2 has to also equal 30. Now, notice I cannot cut 15 in half anymore, but can I cut it in thirds?
Yes.
Okay, so if I divide that by 3, I get 5, which means I got to multiply the 2 by 3, and I get 6. And now I'm done. No, I'm not quite done. In other words, I can also cut the 6 in half and double the 5. So there's another set of factors, 3 times 10. But I think that's all of them. Okay? So,
Mm-hmm.
which of those factors add to the number 11?
5, 6.
Okay? That's the end of it. In other words, every one of these quadratics they've given us so far, there's only 3 steps. Now, that 2 still goes along for the ride. That is your final answer. You can't drop the 2.
Got it.
Okay? All right. Now, it looks like, okay, E is actually a what I call an elementary quadratic. By that, I mean it's first level in difficulty. It's the easiest kind. Okay? So let's do,
Okay.
it's only going to be hard for you for one reason only. But it's not a hard problem. Let's just go through the same steps.
All right. First, we split A between two parentheses,
Now, what do both signs have to be?
negative.
Nope. If they were both
Oh,
negative, you wouldn't get a negative 90.
oh,
If they were both positive, you wouldn't get a negative 90.
so it would have to be positive and a negative?
Exactly. In other words, when you see a negative sign in front of that constant, it means both signs have to be different. Okay? And now the rule's a little different. Now we're looking for factors of 90 that not add but subtract. Because of that negative sign, they have to subtract to what?
1.
Perfect. So let's talk about factors of 90. Got 90 and 1. I got 45 and 2. I'm going to divide that by 5, multiply that by 5. I got 9 and 10. I'm going to cut the 10 in half. I'm going to double the other. There's another set. Might be able to find some more, but I don't need them. What am I looking for? Factors of 90 that subtract to 1.
It's 9 and 10.
Now, which one? Here's where you need the fourth step. You have to figure out where to put the 9 and where to put the 10. We haven't had that problem before because all of our signs were the same. If your signs are the same, you don't need that fourth step. But if your signs are different, take your larger factor and put it with the sign of the middle term, which is negative. So the 10 has to go there. Only other place for the 9 is there. If I do my double smiley face, I get plus 9a minus 10a. Add them up, I get minus 1a or minus a. That is my middle term. I got my answer. Okay? So the only reason this was harder was because you don't see that 1. But you have to remember that it's always there. There's always a 1 right there.
Yep.
Okay. Now, I tell you what, this is a good place to stop. Because that is a second degree quadratic. And it's second
So it would be
degree,
exactly
second
what we
degree
did for.
because of that is not a 1. If that's a 1, they're always simple quadratics. If it's not a 1, they become a lot more difficult. Notice that I cannot factor out a greatest common factor like I was able to here. In other words, over here I was able to factor out a 2, and that turned it into an elementary quadratic. This already was an elementary quadratic. That is not. That, we have a whole different set of rules. Step 1 and step 2 are the same, but step 3 and step 4 are completely different. Okay? So that's why that's a good place to stop for us right there.
All right.
And we'll know next time that we want to start on F and figure out how to do these.
Okay.
Okay? But I think you really know how to do these elementary quadratics. And I think you know how to do them now. And that's a big plus. That'll take care of a lot of math questions for you.
Okay.
In other words, you're going to get quizzed on that tons.
Wouldn't F be like D, though?
No, because D, I was able to take a 2 out, leaving an elementary quadratic. Now all I had to do is deal with the elementary quadratic. This, I can't take anything out. So when I go to factor this, I got to split the p's up. One of them's got to be 3p. The other has to be p.
Oh.
Now I know my signs have to be opposite, but plus minus isn't the same as minus plus. They're going to give you different answers, so I have to allow for both. Now I am looking for factors of 5. There's only one set of factors of 5, 5 and 1. So I don't have a whole lot of choice as to how I'm going to proceed here, but it turns out that if I make that 5 and that 1, whoops, excuse me, that 1, that works. In other words, this becomes a trial and error process. That is minus 5p, right? That is plus 3p. Add them
All right.
together, you get minus 2p. Bingo. That's our middle term. That's our answer. And the answer is, it's not 3p plus or minus 5. It's 3p plus minus 5, excuse me, times p plus 1. So when you're doing these harder quadratics, the last two rules are a little different.
Yeah.
More trial and error. You just have to kind of, they're not going to give you the really hard ones where there would be lots of different factors for the number 5. There's only 2 factors for 5. That's 5 and 1. So there's not a lot of choices. 5 and 1 works. You just have to find the right combination that produces that middle term. That's the secret
Got it.
of doing these harder ones. Okay?
Yeah.
Josh, I think we have another session scheduled for Thursday, I believe. No, hold
Yes.
on. Whoops, that's last week. This week, yeah, Thursday at 4. And did I text the meeting ID number to the right number?
Yes, you did.
Okay, so I'll just, the number I have for you in my contacts list is correct. From now on, I will just text you a 9-digit meeting ID number
Okay.
right before each session. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Josh. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you on Thursday.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye. I don't know how to leave this.
Click on the X in the upper right-hand corner of the Go to Meeting panel, and it'll close it out.
Okay.